Welcome back, and today we are playing out the SU-30SM2, and honestly this thing is basically as strong as I expected, but it's not as cut and dry as I expected it to be. The new engines are incredibly good, meaning that you can actually go defensive and offensive and have enough energy to keep missile jousting. As you know, the SU-30SM is a bit of a missile bust. It's incredibly heavy, it loses energy very quickly, and in a 1v1, sure, you can use the funny thrust vectoring key to get a singular flip off and probably trade with your opponent. This thing, you don't really need to do that. The airframe is strong enough, and it's very good in terms of just going defensive at the start of the match, because now with the new radar, you don't even have to look at people anymore, and you can fire at them throughout the notch, which is incredibly busted if used properly, because right now, even though you are notching, you are able to keep the data link on them and guide the missile in, even though they are notching and chaffing, making it incredibly difficult to defeat. Now I also bring one or two 27 ERs just because of this, because if people are notching properly and they know what they are doing, I simply hardlock them with the HDM and then I shoot a 27 ER. And let me tell you, you're not going to be notching that thing most of the time, and it has netted me a couple of kills that I wouldn't have gotten because I probably would have been outplayed. Notably, the raviolis, they like to sit in the notch, spam mikas at you. With a 27 ER, if you have ample distance, it's basically game over. Now it's of course not foolproof, you are still an incredibly massive target. It is kind of hard to notch in this thing because of that, and especially multi-pathing doesn't work half the time because your plane is simply just that big. It is way above average, and the splash will very often end up hitting your plane. At the same time though, the plane is also so massive, and you should know this from all the other SU-27s and SU-30s, SU-33s, that it doesn't actually do significant damage either, but you can get unlucky if it ruptures a fuel tank, it sets you on fire or something like that. Your game is essentially over, so I try to just not multipath whatsoever, and with the combination of the radar, the amount of missiles and how good these missiles are, together with the new engines and a new airframe, basically, it's an incredibly strong plane, especially in the very early game. You now have the engines and the speed to put energy into the missiles. The R77-1s are incredibly good in terms of range anyway, especially if they don't have to maneuver. If they fly perfectly straight, they have some of the most range in the entire game. And then next to that, if you add a little bit of an F-pull in there, where you go to the right or to the left, wait for them to get a little bit closer, you fire off your missiles and you pull into the other direction, you go into a bit of a notch and you just maintain the data link as you are basically going cold and flying away. Your missiles actually have a pretty decent success range. Now be careful, because if you misplay this, and I've done this a couple of times, you simply just cease to exist. Now I did push my luck a little bit. I was trying to see how close I could get, if I could get an absolutely incredible multi-kill. It didn't end up working out really, and that's why I don't really have much footage of that in the background. I got a couple of triples, but overall they're pretty far apart and it's just BVR slinging, so I'm not gonna put too much of that in here, except for the one game where it actually plays into the full match. The other issue is the R77-1 sometimes just kind of do what these two enemies are doing, where they just kind of kill themselves. It's incredibly frustrating. I'm not entirely sure what causes it, because I haven't really felt a difference between shooting at an off angle, within the circle, outside of the circle, TWS, track PD. It just does it on random, it feels like. Now they did add this right here to the code, so this might have something to do with it. As you can tell, the RVVSD is also included. Incredibly annoying, not entirely sure what causes it, but with me pushing my luck and being unaware of this change, and again, I'm not entirely sure if this is exactly what causes it, you kind of just end up with a little bit of an RNG mobile, but overall I think it is still an incredibly strong plane, and it might actually be the best plane that you will find in Era B right now. The Eurofighter Typhoon and the Ravioli are still very strong, of course, and they definitely have their perks, but I think that the SU-30SM2 just has basically everything that you need. The performance is good enough, it's fast enough, it holds energy enough, it has way too many missiles. The good missiles, the radar is great. The only real issue that I had were two things. It's the countermeasures, they pop per one, and you don't have that many. It's enough again, but it's not an F-15C or a Gripen where you can dump 800 countermeasures in the span of a minute. You have to be somewhat mindful of them. Now I haven't actually ran out myself yet, so it wasn't that much of an issue, but keep in mind your endurance isn't as high when it comes to the countermeasure department and the RWR. The RWR dead zone on the top and the bottom of this plane aren't the best, and overall the information on the RWR can be a little bit higher. It's still enough, it's good enough, definitely, especially with the rest of the kit, and I'm not asking it to be buffed, because then it really would have everything. But it's something to be mindful of when you're playing this thing, and if you want to fire on this thing from directly on the top, you can just count yourself a kill, because they are not going to be seeing that missile coming in. But enough yapping, let's actually go to some of the gameplay. You can tell here that I cut to the middle of the match, because the start of the match, basically nothing happened. I didn't get any long range kills, but it did force me through the middle, and I'm now able to turn back around and come from their side of the airfield, which gives them another angle to pay attention to. And when you're in an angle where most of the people aren't notching towards, you can expect yourself to get some extra free kills, because they're probably notching someone else, they're fighting someone else, and you just kind of get the third party the entire enemy lobby. And you can tell that I'm just kind of farming Typhoons here. Do be careful about the Typhoons. Yes, you have the advantage before the merge, but after the merge, be mindful that the Typhoon has an incredibly strong flight model, and if they're carrying low amounts of fuel, for example, or they are basically clean, because you don't really have to worry about the AIM-120 and the AIM-7 or the AIM-9s at close range anyway, because they're not that maneuverable off the rail. The flight performance is still good, and you really need to be careful of it. So I try to just not merge with them at all. So right here I come in on the Eurofighter, and I just try to put pressure on him with the R-77. He goes to multipad and run away. But at this point I'm basically on the 6 in the control zone, and we just shove an R-73 right up his asshole. And there's really not much you can do if you shoot from close range, because the R-73 just doesn't really like to be flared, especially if you go that fast. You need to kind of move out of the way. And we collect our third kill with relative ease. Now I know that there is 2 more guys on the map, and I know that they are roughly towards the airfield, so I'm just gonna kind of sit in this mountain range and wait for them to pop up. It's a big map, there's only 2 guys left, and if they have their radar off, there is a chance that I'm not gonna be able to see them. So I just kind of keep looking around to get a little bit of altitude, but I do want to just use these mountains as a bit of hard cover. Now we notice the F-15, he's 20 kilometers out. I wait a little bit longer just for him to cross that mountain range. Then I fire on him and I dip behind the mountain myself. I don't want to merge with him at this kind of distance. I can't really multipad. I want to close the gap, but I don't have the missiles to contest him in this kind of fight. If that's an F-15C that just landed, he is going to out ammunition me completely. And even though I might have the better plane, I only have 4 missiles left, so I am actually just going to use the terrain, wrap around, and try to get closer without having the multipad, without having the notch, and without putting myself in danger, essentially, because I know that at point blank range, the R-77-1 is going to outperform his AIM-120 completely, and to top it off, my airframe on 2 minutes of fuel is going to win versus the F-15 as well. Let him walk a little bit closer, wait for him to fire, and then we just dip into the mountain range. We get a severe, and we don't really have to worry about his missiles. There is no RNG, there is no anything really. A mountain is a mountain, and it will block the missile 100% of the time, unless of course they lob it over, but you can tell they do that before the missile gets to you. We get kill number 4, and then I thought I'm gonna get a little fight with Mr. F-15 here. We turn the radar off to get close to him, but he is just not paying attention whatsoever, and we collect a relatively free kill. There is another thing that I do want to talk about, and that's the stock grind, and I know that stock grinds are pretty bad overall, but with this one, you unlock the R-27ET into the R-73, into the R-27ER, and only then do you get the R-77-1. And I think this is absolutely criminal. I'm not entirely sure who thinks this is a good idea. I know that they are trying to make money and that they want to extract as much of it as they possibly can. But this is not the way. This is not how you do it. I tried to fly it out with the stock loadout. It's incredibly bleak. It's basically not playable. And I know this is the case for basically all top tiers right now. But we really are nearing the range where every plane has 10 missiles. And if you only have 2 Fox 3s, guess what happens? If you shoot the missile too early, you get no kill. If you do shoot it a little bit late, you get no kill. And if you shoot it at the exact same time, well, there's 15 other missiles flying at the target that you're firing on. So the chances of you getting that kill are pretty slim. So BVR is essentially out of the window. other than some free kills that you get here and there. And then late game, you only have 2 missiles and you need to wait for the scenarios where people get close enough to you. But then you get the issue that people start firing at you. You need to notch, and they can just out ammo you. And once they notice that you're not firing any missiles back at them, they can just kind of push you. And that is that. You can't really defend yourself in the 1v1 if you have to notch. If they merge with you and they start kind of on your 6, I'm just gonna say good luck. The trust vectoring key can be funny and it can work, and very often you can trade with the guy that you're fighting with. But you have to keep in mind that if you don't have an R73, the chances of you getting that kill are just pretty slim. It is again bleak. Let's take a look at some full game again, and this time around I tried to do what I mentioned earlier, where I push in and I ripple off all my missiles. Now this is mainly because it's a city map, everyone gets a very close spawn, the match isn't that big and the lobbies mostly don't last that long, so I thought to myself, let me just dump all my missiles in and then we go back for a landing. Now funnily enough, this does not work whatsoever, and this is definitely a bit of a fail, but you can tell that I'm able to lock onto these people for forever. And if you get good launches and you're able to data link all the missiles in, you can tell how powerful this can be. You don't have to shoot 11 missiles off, you can also just shoot 2 or 3, which is of course going to be more effective, because now we only got a single kill. And that's mainly because the enemy actually reacted properly. People don't really just headbutt missiles anymore like that. This is not a year ago. Everyone has 12 missiles these days, and people know that at the start of the game they shouldn't just fly perfectly straight. We come into the furball a little bit later, because of course after dumping all our missiles we land and rearm. One missile at long range decided to fly to Narnia and actually managed to hit a MiG-15 bis, which is fantastic. And right now we are on top of everyone, which means that we can just rain missiles down and help out our teammate. The SU-30SM2 here is gonna have a little bit of a combination going on. It's gonna be an IR missile together with the ER, and the chances of him notching the ER are pretty slim. But if he does manage to notch it, he's not gonna be also flaring the R73. He's gonna collect one or the other, and that's exactly what happens. We get kill number 3, and then we kind of disengage for now, and we wait for the SU-30SM2 to start engaging the teammate that we just kind of freed up. Now they merge. You can tell that he just kind of barrel stuffed him with an AIM-9. JS there, the Gripen, is probably damaged. They merge, Gripen flies into the water, and we look for our next victim, which is going to be the F-15 that pops up on the RWR. What do? We kind of just look at him with the TWS, we pick him up, we lock him, we fire up the missile over the mountain range here. Yes, that's still a mountain. And we again just use the terrain here to make sure that that missile doesn't hit us. Not having the multipad is a great addition to have here, because multipadding again just isn't that worth it when you are flying the flanker. Now what do? He actually goes cold and he flies away, so we go into the multipad still while flying away from the missile. It hits the ground, we pop up directly underneath the Typhoon, so we just kind of lob a missile his way, and he is going to have to turn around for that and open himself up for the guys that are coming from the front. Luckily for us, that's not what he does, and he eats it directly in the tail. And now we have to worry about the F-15. Now luckily, we only have the F-15 to worry about. There is an F-18 across the map, but he is not really going to be a threat whatsoever. So we are just going to continue on paying attention to the F-15. Now for now, there's some missiles coming my way. I have no idea where they are, so I'm just going to actually wait a little bit and then use this little shoreline. I'd almost call it a mountain, but it's not quite one, to block his missiles. Over the water, multipadding is a little bit more reliable when it comes to the flanker. But you can tell here we have a little bit of a shoreline. We use it to block his missile, and then we come up over the mountain range and lock him up. Now we still have 3 R77, so I'm not going to use them sparingly, as this is essentially the last person in the lobby. He notches the first one, or kind of goes cold, I'm not entirely sure, but he dodges the first one and then flies in between all the buildings, so I need to hold my fire because I'm just gonna waste another one. We have the SU-34 coming in from Groovy over there, BVDD, something Chinese, must be a nice comment about his mother or something. It probably doesn't mean BVDD mother detonate or something like that. R77 just curves off to Narnia for no reason. We shoot off another missile. The R73 also gets flared, and then we finally and actually kill him with the guns. Today's session has been some of the most abhorrent gameplay I've ever had. My PC kept crashing basically the game didn't work in my favor and I was playing like an absolute unk. All in all, a pretty sad experience, but the SU-30 luckily carried me through all of it. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow again with another abysmal top tier patch video.